for coming back to my channel. Real quick before the video begins, I just wanted to throw out there that the whole entire video I am not looking straight at the camera, I'm looking over here, and just call it a rookie mistake. I do apologize, but the information is still valid. It was a bit too long and too involved and too detailed for me to refilm it by the time I noticed. It's too late. So I do apologize that I won't be looking right at the camera. However, I do hope that you can still glean valuable information from this. And my second and final disclaimer is that this is simply what worked for my family based on another professional's advisement. And so I hope it can work for you as well. But I am not a doctor, so please do what you think is best for your kids and your family while sleep training or not. All right, now let's get into the video. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I just wanted to talk about sleep training with twins. We've been sleep training our boys since as soon as we possibly could, just to keep them on the same schedule. And what we ended up doing is we went off of a book, which is a resource that I would love to give you parents, whether or not you have twins, single babies, or multiples beyond that, triplets, quadruplets. It works no matter what you have. The book is called 12 Hours Sleep by 12 Weeks Old. The author is Susie Giordano, and she's considered the baby coach. And so I'll just show you it here. This is the book. It is only a 2-hour read, so you can sit down and literally read through the whole book in just a matter of 2 hours. I doubted that that was true because I'm not a huge reader. I've been picking up reading more lately, but it's true. I sat and I read through it in just about 2 to 3 hours when I was still pregnant with the babies. So once you get through that, you will realize that sleep training is for any babies, like I said, singles or multiples, from the age of about 3 months all the way up to the age of about 18 months. And there have been extreme cases of kids even 5 years old. So if you have a toddler who's just not sleeping, not taking their naps, always needs to be in your bed or needs you to come calm them down so that they can put themselves back to sleep in their crib or whatnot, you can possibly train even the older toddlers. But ideally it's for brand new babies, and that is from 3 months, which is 12 weeks old, all the way up to, you could start up to 1.5 years, which is 18 months. So we had twins, so we had to wait a little bit longer than the 3-month mark. We started probably around 5 months old, and they are now 11 months and have been beautifully sleep trained for, I would say, probably about 3 months now. So the goal of sleep training is to have your baby sleep through the night and also take 2 naps during the day. Now, sleeping through the night means 12 hours at night in the crib on their own, where they don't need you to find the hidden binky. They don't need you to calm them back to sleep. If they wake up, they can put themselves back to sleep, and they don't need to rely on you, the parent. So that means you have 12 hours every night where you just have your own time. You can sleep, you can do what needs to be done around the house, work on your hobbies, spend time with your spouse or whatnot. It also means there's a 1-hour nap in the morning, and there's a 2-hour nap in the afternoon, and it's the same rules apply. The baby is to self-soothe and be in the crib either sleeping or playing quietly and entertaining him or herself until you come and release them from their nap or from their sleep time at the end of the night. For some people who may be a little skeptical and think that this book is not going to work for their child, I would just like to share a quick quote with you from page 8, which blows my mind. And I mean, it's worked for my family, so I believe it. But the author says, "For more than 10 years, I have been training babies from singletons to quadruplets to sleep 12 hours a night, and not one baby has ever failed, ever." That's impressive. And so I just want to, again, share that resource. I would recommend it to all parents who are trying to get their babies to sleep through the night. That's 12 hours. And we do 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. and then the 1-hour nap in the morning, which we do 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and a 2-hour nap in the afternoon, which we do 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Just real quick, I'll go over, the book goes over some benefits of baby sleep success, so why it might be beneficial to sleep train your children. There is little crying involved. This is not a let them cry for 20 minutes and then go in. This is a limited crying solution. So for parents who are completely heartbroken with the idea of just letting your baby scream and be alone, it may work for some people, but for others it won't. I believe, and the author does believe, that it can be a little emotionally traumatizing for the parents and the children. So it's a limited crying solution. It's only 3 to 5 minutes at a time of crying, not chunks of like 15, 20, 30 minutes, nothing like that. Also, your baby will be happier and more cooperative, and I found this to be true. They sense that there's love, there's structure, and there's security in their system, and they are just happier, and they know, like my babies, they know when it's time to go to sleep. They love their nap time, and they wake up to us and they're happy again until the next nap time they're refreshed to play. So essentially a baby needs to slow down in order to function normally again. So, you know, newborns will sleep just all the time, but once they get to the stage where they are more active during the day, this is going to benefit you big time, because they're going to have that opportunity to be refreshed after their naps to play again for the next stretch of time. Also, you will be using proactive parenting. So essentially that just means if you're not a zombie as a parent and you're getting your sleep and rest, the babies are going to benefit from having a happy, non-zombie parent. Another benefit is that you will have a predictable schedule, so you will know when you have time to yourself to get work done, to clean around the house, to order groceries, to pick up prescriptions, to do whatever you need to do, have your own free time. And that is so crucial to even just feel like a human being. So I know every day I have 3 hours every day I can look forward to if I can just push through the stretches of time, especially some days I'm more eager than others to get to my time, but I know it's coming. Another benefit, you will also be able to handle multiple children more easily and just function as a family with more ease. It's gonna, again, kind of go back to that predictable schedule, and it just helps you function like a well-oiled machine rather than just being frantic and crazy and never knowing what's gonna happen next or what's on the schedule for the day. Essentially, the baby's not going to dictate the schedule, you're dictating the schedule, and the baby's adapting to the family. And that's what families are, we adapt to each other, so I think it's great. And lastly, the plan is so easy, you can just follow it on your own, so you don't need like a baby coach to come in or anything. You just follow the rules and it's done. It's pretty easy. Okay, so jumping right in, weeks 1 through 6. Okay, so weeks 1 through 6, your baby is brand new and is barely learning how to just eat and sleep and be a human. So really, you're not sleep training during this time. You're taking it easy and you're just trying to avoid bad habits in general. Most likely your doctor has told you the baby does need to be eating every 2.5 to 3 hours. So you're just trying to keep the baby alive and handle life. You really don't need to worry about anything too much here. The baby will basically wake up to eat. If you have twins, we do recommend tandem nursing. That's where you feed both babies at the same time, because every 2.5 to 3 hours, imagine if it takes a half hour for the baby to feed, or more likely say 20 minutes for one baby to feed, and you're doing them one at a time. After the swaddling and the diaper change and the feeding and all of that, and then you redo it with the other baby, you're gonna get 5 minutes of sleep. So you have to just learn to tandem feed, whether you have help or you do one nursing while one's on a bottle. I do both nursing with a twinsy nursing pillow. That's really come in handy for me. But really that's what you're doing. You're charting down every day the times that you're feeding the baby and how long they're eating, or if you're bottle feeding, you can write down how many ounces that they're feeding. Weeks 6 through 8, this is what the baby coach calls a 2-week storm. And in her experience, for whatever reason, weeks 6 through 8, all babies kind of go through a fussy time, whether they have bad colic, they just aren't sleeping well. You may want to use gripe water. That's something that we definitely had to use. But this is, again, not a time that you're really doing sleep training yet. You're just kind of letting the 2-week storm pass and you're helping your baby through it. And so just be calm and realize that you're gonna get through it. It's during week 6 through 8 that the babies are probably eating every 3 hours at this time. They're old enough now that they've probably gained enough weight. Of course, go by what your doctor says. In the twins case, we had one that was still needing to eat 2.5 to 3 hours, while the other one we were allowed to stretch 3 to 4 hours if the baby let us. The baby really didn't let us go much past 3 hours, so we ended up just waking them both up at the same time to keep tandem feeding until, of course, they were able to go 4 hours between feedings. At night, the babies will naturally start stretching the time that they need to wake up. So that was always, I remember that was a beautiful thing when the doctor told us, if the baby lets you sleep 5 or 6 hours between feedings, great. Did we get that stretch of time? Not always, but when we did, it was like you're checking if the baby's okay, you feel a little more rested. It's wonderful. And so that's naturally going to start happening around this time, week 6 through 8. And again, with sleep training, you don't have to worry about starting that just yet. It's coming up. All right, weeks 8 through 12. This is where sleep training begins. We call it in the book, they call it baby boot camp. And so it's time to begin getting the 12 hours a night sleep and the 1 hour day nap and the 2 hour afternoon nap. So that's our goal. There is a disclaimer. In order to start sleep training a baby, the baby has to be the proper age and weight. So if your baby is not at least 9 pounds, your baby is not ready to be on a strict regimen with sleep scheduling. And if your baby is not eating 24 ounces of milk within a 24-hour period, so that's day and night, then they're not ready. Now, you probably know, or you will experience soon if you're a mother, that sometimes a feeding can take a baby 5 minutes and they just are done, and another feeding may take 20 minutes. But as long as throughout the whole day about 24 ounces are consumed, then the baby is potentially ready, and that probably means he's a 9-pound baby as well. It's eating plenty of food, and so the baby's ready to be sleep trained. The baby also has to be of proper age. So if you just have a single baby, you can start sleep training as early as 4 weeks old. If you have twins, you can start sleep training as early as 8 weeks old. And if you have triplets or more, the baby should be at least 12 weeks old. So that does mean you're just kind of laying back and chilling and making sure the babies are alive for longer, and you don't really get to jump into the sleep training schedule. But it also means you're making sure your baby is ready, of proper age and weight, and consuming enough milk throughout the day that this will be a success for you. If you do it outside of this, if you start sleep training outside of these recommended disclaimers, then it's just gonna probably be a fail, and it's gonna be discouraging. So don't try to do that. Okay, so now to actually go into the process of what the sleep training is. It is done in a chronological order. So the baby has to master step 1 before it can move forward to the next step. And then steps 2 and 3 kind of happen at the same time. And once that's mastered, you move into the last step, which is step 4. And I'll go into the details of those in a minute, but just real quick to let you know what they are. Step 1 is the daytime feedings. So that means the baby has to be eating, and this is the goal to get you there, every 4 hours. 4 times a day for 12 hours. And if I keep looking down, it's because I have my notes. Once your baby is eating every 4 hours, 4 times a day for the first 12 hours of the day, you can move on to steps 2 and 3, which kind of overlap. So step 2 is the nighttime feedings. And essentially you're going to gradually eliminate all feedings over those 12 hours. So for us, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., the babies don't get fed because they're eating enough milk and all of that during the day to make up for those lost hours. And then step 3 is night sleeping. So that means the baby is asleep or quietly playing in the crib for 12 hours on their own without needing you there. And lastly, step 4, once everything else has been mastered, is daytime sleeping. So that is 1 hour nap in the morning and 2 hour nap in the afternoon. Again, same rules apply as nighttime sleeping, where they are asleep or quietly playing for that full hour or full 2 hours without needing you there. In order to help your baby accomplish and have a successful sleep training, there are toolboxes for the daytime and the nighttime, and essentially you'll read all of this if you read the book, but the daytime toolbox is just to distract your baby. So if you're trying to stretch the baby's feeding, or you're trying to keep the baby awake until nap time, it's all about distracting the baby, hopping from maybe bouncers to playtime to taking a walk outside, giving the baby a pacifier if needed once you get closer to the nap time and things like that. And then the nighttime toolbox is to soothe the baby without picking the baby up. The whole goal is leave the baby in the crib. You're there with them to help them through this challenge of learning how to sleep on their own, but you're not going to pick them up because you can't fix the problem for them. You can't just make them sleep or make them happy. They have to learn to self-soothe, but you're right there with them when they need you. And that's really comforting for both you and baby. So that's the nighttime toolbox, is to soothe without picking the baby up. All right, so step 1 is daytime feedings. The baby needs to be eating 4 times a day, and it's every 4 hours for the first 12 hours. So for us, it's 8 a.m. We have the babies nursing. We feed them again at noon, at 4 p.m., and at 8 p.m. And that 8 o'clock p.m. is the last feeding of the day, and all through the night. They will eat again at 8 in the morning. And it is okay to be flexible. You don't have to be like, okay, right on the dot. 15 minutes before your morning feeding, you should be waking up and changing diapers, possibly changing the baby into daytime clothes. And that way by 8 a.m. you're nursing. When you have twins, it takes longer than 15 minutes. I would give yourself maybe 30, possibly 45 minutes. I know in the very beginning when the babies were brand new, just born, everything took longer. You would change a diaper and then there'd be a blowout while you were changing the other diaper, and so you'd have to go back and do it before you could even start a feeding. And that's just how it is. So give yourself enough time that by that 8 o'clock start time that you're ready. But essentially with all feedings, you can give yourself a 15-minute window. So that means if the baby's hungry early, just try to stretch them if you can to 15 minutes before, and then you can feed them. So if the baby was ready at 7:45 a.m. so hungry, I would start feeding the baby. Or if the baby wasn't hungry yet and at 8:15 a.m. they were ready to eat, you can do 15 minutes later. So it's kind of this flexible 5 to 15 minutes before or after, then that's just fine. If your baby in the beginning of the sleep training is waking up before they're supposed to be, so you want to have your schedule at 8 a.m. as your start time. If the baby is waking up before 8 a.m., say between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m., you want to just calm the baby, soothe the baby, and try to stretch them, like I was saying, to 7:45 to start feeding them. If the baby wakes up even before that, an hour or more before they're supposed to be feeding, so if the baby woke up at 7 a.m., maybe 6:30 a.m., that's a little too early for you to stretch all the way like a whole hour. So what you would do is you would feed the baby just an ounce of milk, which is about 3 minutes of nursing. I did do this and it did work, so I promise. It just kind of curbs their appetite for a minute and stretches them the extra 30 minutes, and that's when they get to nurse for the first morning feeding as long as they want to. So naturally over time, each feeding will take a little bit longer and the baby will basically be eating more at each feeding, and you will get to 4 feedings in the 12 hours, 4 hours, every 4 hours in the day. A side note is that it's good to know the feedings in the beginning for the first 9 months should take about 30 minutes, and that includes diaper changes and burping the baby and feeding the baby. Everything included should be about a half-hour process. So just keep that in mind for the first 9 months. The feeding should be about 30 minutes long. Step 2 is nighttime feedings. Once your baby is eating throughout the day properly, as mentioned in step 1, you're ready to move on to eliminating the night feedings. And so basically when you have nighttime feedings, everything stays calm and quiet. You want the baby to stay in a sleeping state, and you only change diapers if they've pooped. You keep a diaper fluffy, as we call it, if there's just pee, but you want to remove the diaper and get him a new one if he pooped in it. And this will just help keep the baby very calm and quiet, and everything is just still very sleepy, and you'll feed the baby as he needs to, and he's going to learn how to stretch his nighttime feedings and eventually eliminate them. So naturally babies will set a pattern for nighttime feedings. Once they're feeding throughout the day 4 times throughout the day, naturally they're going to be consuming more milk in the day, so they won't need as much during the night, and so the baby will naturally start stretching their own time. So basically you're not setting an alarm to feed them, you're just waiting till they wake you up to be fed, and you'll start to notice a pattern, so you should probably keep track of that. Essentially, it's okay for the baby to spring forward. If they go a stretch of 5 hours instead of 3 hours, then that's okay. But if they're ready to eat at 2 hours instead, you don't really want them to fall backwards. So use your nighttime toolbox of soothing them and calming them, give them a pacifier and things like that to stretch them to the next feeding time. It is important to remember, if you have twins or multiples, that these babies are individual people, and this can be a little bit hard, but the babies are separate and are going to set their own patterns. So you might be overlapping and you might be having a little less sleep if that's the case, because you're only feeding one baby at a time, unless both babies are up and ready to go because they're naturally on the same schedule. I experienced that a lot of the time, but there were times where one baby was up and ready and hungry in the middle of the night to eat, and the other one was dead asleep for a couple more hours, and then that one would wake up ready to eat while the other one was well fed and asleep. And so you're kind of overlapping just for a little bit, but it only takes a couple weeks to eliminate nighttime feedings. And the elimination order, usually babies feed 3 times throughout the night, maybe 2 if you're lucky. And so you want to eliminate the middle of the night feeding, which is the second feeding. That's the first one you want to cut out, and we'll explain how to do that. After that, you want to eliminate the very first feeding, and after that, you want to eliminate the third feeding. So here's an example. I feed the babies at 8 a.m., at noon, at 4 p.m., and at 8 p.m. That is always going to be the same. I'm not eliminating those feedings the baby needs, those 4 feedings. That's step 1, always. But once that's happened, the babies used to wake up at almost like a clock every 4 hours. They would wake up at midnight to eat. That's considered the first nighttime feeding. They would wake up again at 4 in the morning to feed. That's considered the second nighttime feeding. And they would wake up again a little early, probably let's say 6 a.m. to have a snack, and that's the third feeding. So I'm going to eliminate the second feeding first, which is 4 in the morning. And once we do that, we'll eliminate the first feeding, which was midnight. And once we do that, we'll eliminate the last feeding, which is 6 a.m. So I hope that makes sense. If you have questions, please put them in the comments below. So essentially, the way that you eliminate a feeding, I'm gonna focus on the 4 a.m. feeding, middle of the night, second feeding. The baby usually nurses about 8 minutes every time that I feed him. This is an example. I'm gonna allow that up until I start training in step 2. And now that I'm here, the baby gets to eat less time. So you take away a ½ ounce of food, or if you're nursing, that's about 3 minutes of nursing time. So the baby gets 5 minutes to nurse. So that's what you start. So for 3 days in a row, the baby can nurse for only 5 minutes instead of 8 minutes. And once you do that for 3 days in a row at 4 a.m., that's a 5-minute feeding. You reduce it again. And so after those 3 days, they get to feed for just 2 minutes. And after doing that for 3 days in a row, you reduce it 3 minutes again, or a ½ ounce, which is no 4 a.m. feeding. And now you've eliminated a feeding, and you do the same thing and the same process on the next 2 feedings. The next one would be the midnight, and then following the 6 a.m. The baby is naturally going to start eating more during the daytime to make up for the lost hours that you've eliminated for the nighttime feeding. So that means once the baby catches on to the process, they may not need you to take away 3 minutes or a ½ ounce of milk in the night. They may just do it themselves. Once the baby eats less at a feeding, that becomes the new time. So say I start the training, daytimes are good, we're gonna eliminate this night feeding, 4 a.m. feeding, we're gonna do it. They usually eat at 8 minutes, but I'm letting them eat at 5 minutes this time. So I get through one day at 5 minutes, I get through the second day at 5 minutes, the baby has a third day at 5 minutes, but oh, he only ate for 3 minutes. That is the new time. So for the next 2 days, I'll let him eat again for just 3 minutes, and then I'll drop it down. So anytime that the baby automatically eats less, that is the new time that you feed the baby during that chunk of the feeding. And if they eliminate a feeding altogether, that feeding is done. You don't go back and add it. So the baby has sprung forward, you're not allowing the baby to fall back. And that's okay, because they are still getting the right amount of food during the daytime, and they don't need it during the nighttime. This works, I promise you. Step 3 will kind of overlap. As you are eliminating night feeding, step 3 is nighttime sleeping. And that's naturally just going to start happening. They kind of go hand in hand. So, but once you do have all the nighttime feedings eliminated, you may still need to help the baby stay asleep throughout the night. So the way that this works is the baby should be asleep through 12 hours throughout the night, or quietly playing more towards the morning time without your help. It will help the baby to realize that bedtime is coming if you have a nighttime routine. You start it about 30 or 45 minutes before bedtime. So our bedtime in our family is 8 p.m. That means the babies are actually nursing at 8 p.m. And so by 8:30 p.m., maybe 8:20 these days, they're actually in their cribs ready for bed. So about 7:30 or 7:15 p.m., 30 to 45 minutes before bedtime, or last feeding time, 8 p.m., we start our nighttime routine. And it just means the lights in the house go down, it's dim, we get quieter, we've started doing reading time. You can do baths to relax the baby, you can do massage after their bath with lotion, they get into pajamas, they get special nighttime diapers, which we use the Huggies brand, I've talked about in my other videos. And you just have a routine that the baby catches on, like, this happens every night. We don't do baths every night, but there's some version of the nighttime routine. We just get calm, relaxed, dark, quiet, we read, and we kiss and love the baby, and they are realizing it's time, and they start calming down just like you would do at the end of your day to wind down. The baby is just learning that it's time to wind down, and they love it. They love the security and being soothed to wind down before bed. Once the routine is done and it's 8 o'clock p.m. in our house, that's the time to feed. We'll feed the baby and we'll burp them, and then we'll go put them in their crib awake. You don't put the baby in the crib asleep, not yet, not until down the road are you supposed to do that. So you put the baby in the crib while they're still awake, and you can kiss them goodnight, and you close the door behind you, and that's when the real training begins. Now we do have, as part of our nighttime routine, we turn on a humidifier with a little night light, and we turn on a sound machine. I highly recommend sound machines, especially if you have twins. Just the noise helps everything to kind of stay calm throughout the night. So if one baby is crying and screaming, the other one actually doesn't wake up because they're used to the other baby's sounds and they kind of sleep through them. And the sound machine helps just kind of kill all the tiny sounds that might startle you throughout the night. It just kind of masks all of that. And so we do have one we bought for $20 from Bye Bye Baby. It doesn't have to be anything expensive or extravagant. It just is the sound of running water, or you can have white noise or something like that. So once that you close the bedroom door, the baby is in the crib awake, it's time for them to put themselves to sleep. This is also for throughout the night. If there's a time where the baby wakes up, this is the process. So step 3 is about sleeping through the night. If the baby does wake up or is fussy or is crying or is calling for you, you start a timer. I literally just take my phone and start a timer and watch the clock. You wait 3 minutes to 5 minutes, depending on how extreme the baby is or how much your heart can handle. I usually wait 3 minutes, maybe 2.5 sometimes. And you don't go in the room, and you just let the baby figure it out. Sometimes they figure it out on their own, and eventually they will, and they'll just stop crying. But what you want to do is just wait 3 minutes and 3 to 5 minutes, and if the baby still needs you, then you can go in the room and you do not pick them up. You can pat their back, you can shush, you soothe just by being there. You don't really want to stare them in the eyes and give them eye contact because they feel like they're missing out and they want you to pick them up. So don't give them really eye contact. I know it sounds silly, but trust me, they love you and they love your eyes. So if you're looking at them, they want to be picked up. So don't look at them in the eyes, and don't talk to them. You don't want to be loud and like, hey, it's okay, calm down, you're fine, or anything like that. You just want to shh. Everything's still calm. It's still quiet. It's still the nighttime routine. Everything is relaxed. It's time to wind down, even if it's in the middle of the night. So 3 to 5 minutes, the baby's still crying. You can go in, pat their back, shush, soothe. Once the baby calms down and they're calm, I'd say for just a few seconds, you exit the room and close the door behind you and restart the clock if you need to. The baby may not cry again. They may be asleep and happy. But even if you close the door and they start crying right away, set your timer. Don't go back in right away. Give them their 3 to 5 minutes to figure it out. If during the 3 to 5 minutes they calm themselves, even just for 15 seconds, you know, you've set your timer, they're at 2.5 minutes and they stop crying and they're quiet and they're still quiet, and 15 seconds later they start crying again, they waited long enough. You need to reset the timer again, even just for 15 seconds of self-soothing. And that means another 3 to 5 minutes on the clock. And this process repeats. It does work, I promise you, and the baby will learn to self-soothe. Once all of that is done, you are ready for step 4. This one took a while. One baby was actually ready for step 4 before the other baby, and I realized I was trying to get them both on this step at the same time, and it wasn't working for one, and I realized, oh, because they're not sleeping through the night on their own yet. They're not ready, but the other one was sleeping through the night because he loves sleep like I do. That's my Luke. And Oliver wasn't ready for that. Oliver still needed help. And so Oliver had a hard time with step 4 because I was pushing him into it, and then I realized it. Luke was done with step 4 right away, and it just is different for every baby. They are individuals if you have multiples like we do. So step 4 is daytime sleeping. Babies up to 18 to 24 months of age, that's 1.5 years to 2 years old, they still need naps. They need a 1-hour nap in the morning and a 2-hour nap in the afternoon. They can be asleep or quiet, but it's the same thing as the nighttime. So you do have sort of a miniature version of a nighttime routine. Maybe we'll read before our naps, we'll turn on the sound machine, we turn out the light, everything is quiet and we get calm. And I put them in the crib awake, I kiss them goodnight, and I close the door behind me, and it's the whole timer process again, but now it's just instead of in the middle of the night, it's for your nap time. So we do 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. for our morning nap, and then we do 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. for our afternoon nap. You don't start the process of step 4 of daytime naps until the baby's been sleeping through the night for at least 2 weeks straight. So once the baby really has down steps 2 and 3, they are not eating throughout the night and they are sleeping for consistently 2 weeks solid throughout the night without needing you, then you can do step 4 and start them on their nap. So you do want to make sure that your baby is ready for the nap by being well fed and by being tired. So it's important before naps to feed the baby, make sure they've had their breakfast or their lunch, whatever time that was. It doesn't have to be right before you put them in the bed. Like for example, we feed our baby 8 a.m. and then just a couple hours later at 10 a.m. they're ready for bed. We're not gonna feed them again. They go to bed and they get to eat at noon when they wake up, play a little bit, and then they have their lunch. So as long as the baby has fed between that 4-hour chunk of time in the morning or in the afternoon, so they've been well fed and they've been active. It really is not going to help you if the baby isn't tired enough to go to sleep if they haven't really been active. So especially before your 2-hour nap and after your 1st-hour nap, in that chunk of kind of the main part of the day, it's your afternoon time, before they go down, in our case at 2 o'clock, you really want to keep them active. You want to keep them playing, you want to keep them entertained, have different activities, maybe learn, read, and definitely if you can, go outside, go on a walk, play in the pool, whatever it is, even if it's for just 5, 10, or 15 minutes to be outside. There's something about the sun that drains you, and the baby's ready for that nap. So especially before your 2-hour nap, that's when I would recommend activity and playtime outside if you can, and it does mention that in the book as well. And finally, the 15-minute window still applies here, so just watch your baby's cues. If they're tired early, 15 minutes before the nap time, great, put them in the bed early. It's 15 minutes, it's not a big deal. If they're tired 30 minutes, 45 minutes before, you want to use your daytime toolbox and try to just distract them, play with them, give them other things that they can think about to just get them 10 or 15 minutes closer to that nap time. And so once you're within the 15-minute window before or after, say they're too playful and they're just not tired yet, give them 15 minutes after the nap, and that 15 minutes could make all the difference. And then they're gonna start acting tired, follow their cue, they're ready for sleep, and they're gonna stay down the whole time, or at least do quiet play within the crib. And that's it, that's sleep training. There are exceptions that happen, and there are times you're gonna have to kind of reset or backtrack, not usually on nighttime feedings or anything, except when they're teething. So my babies have been teething, and so sometimes they'll need one feeding throughout the night, and they'll need it a few nights in a row. And so just recently, I've had to trim Oliver back. He's been eating for 8 minutes every night for the past maybe week, and I've realized that I'm not enjoying waking up in the night. And so I took my book back out, reminded myself how to do it, and I eliminated 3 minutes, and now he's eating 5 minutes at a time, and tonight he will eat only 2 minutes at a time, and then in a couple days he won't be needing that feeding anymore, and I'll be getting my sleep. And so there are exceptions, whether the baby is sick, or maybe you're on vacation, or maybe there's just like special events throughout the day that mess with the naps or whatever. So it's okay to be flexible. You just, during the first 6 months of this training and of their life, you don't really want there to be that many exceptions if you can have any say in it. After 6 months, the baby is more adaptable and able to kind of go with the flow, but those first 6 months, they really do need that strict regimen. If you can, stick with it. So that's everything. I hope that this did not bore you. I hope it really did help you. I know it was a lot. Essentially, you can just get the book that we read, and just remember that quote in the beginning, that over 10 years of experience and singletons and twins all the way to quadruplets, there's not been a single baby that's ever failed ever. And so you can do it. Your mama, your dada, you've got this. And I just want to encourage you, if you need anything or you have any questions, I'm available. I can do Zoom calls potentially, or I can message you answers in the comments or whatever through email. I would love to help you and be a resource for you. So one more time, I'll grab the book. I'm not sponsored in any way, but I just believe in it because it's worked for us. It's 12 Hours Sleep by 12 Weeks Old by Susie Gordana, and she really is the baby coach. We trust her, and it works for us. I hope you have a great day. God bless you, and thank you so much for watching. Please remember to thumbs up this video if you liked it, and to subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more.